Modelia dish viewing or sa talaling se shechore di and the kamba litane tarje acha Tsering somalang pomokera chi buchung nyama pel and di da logical test doctor cheje ni mona kolia shechre and some to tarje shu the test kan den taste chesan shedi mingle talaling suware. The first piece is a traditional song from Kam area known as Ba. And this song is about a beautiful maiden named Tsering Nyima. And the song is about her beauty and her life.
Tam sung ke gi ala chu
seyo 너무 신기해다 달라리 샤요 리갈라 세가요 리 잠바르마로 그렇잖아.
Three sugar than the trolling chick, Kodishi Yore, and trolling the so than the Kamenang di and Bhuchung di Sonam to Saviour, Tringi Tsumchudi, Tsumka Nal Tawas, Cheche Zombo Kachi, Yamdo, any trolling Shuad in Digre. So this morning, the second program is a panel discussion. This will be moderated by Bhuchung di Sonam. The topic we are discussing this morning is language of homecoming Tibetan novels. So Bhuchung di Sonam will be engaging with the discussion with some of the Tibetan novelists here. Bhuchung di Sonam is a Tibetan writer, artist. He wears many hats. Also a translator, editor, and a publisher. Bhuchung and I, we go back many years, starting Tibet Writes as a writer's circle, and later also going into publishing Black Neck books. And if you're interested, we have some wonderful publication over there to buy. And once again, I introduce and welcome Bhuchung di Sonam and the panelists, and Bhuchung will introduce the other speakers. Bhuchung la penaruna.
Hello. Some show the gaming Bhuchungi, and the Tindil Sonam Shingi, any Tsering Shokodela, Anzo, Pugi, Juzeba Tudungi, Linglong Leshi Tangudi, Linglong Leshi Tangudi, Tsumka Nala Tawa, Sedigi, any Anzo, Linglong Nala, Gaminange, Anzo, Tingdu Pugi, Tsumabo, Sumpe Yore, any Tangudi, Tsering Namgyal. Tsering Namgyal Yagala Gyagala Chalonchi any the Torim Lobre to get some Taiwan Lobjong Re any Koran Inji Pui Gay any Hindi Kingre any Tsering Yangzom Lamla Tsering Yangzom La Payula Gibre and Payula Gi Payula Lopchin Dijala Canada La Page Canada Gi Torim Lobre na Lobjong Dijala New York She Nyanda Chewe Columbia University Nala Tsumrik na lobjong na re any Tsering like novel thangbu log ni ngela tembre any di tep dige chasang pigela tandang zonga yore and Tsering gi novel we measure the earth with our bodies like di tandapodu gi nga na la yu cha bare phu na la yu cha bare phu na la yu ji di unji di khasa ima khasheng ngela phu gi penzu khang la chungre di phu da injin ji pige la onzo pige tan sha yu any di jela Tenzin Nyima la 먼저 너랑게 하고 고엘 제바나 전주 지수 나로기 좀보 최신기 실행상도 그랑게 노벨 통보대 덴진 세버시 된 주 분유비리 칸에 나닝로로 빠르게지 운지 쉬버리 아니 그랑디 노벨 통보 티디전 그랑 공로 니적숨로 와 니적숨 제베지 전주 나라 창로 중앙지기 비이 나라 노벨디 티요레 제장 그랑 숨라니 Kamu dari novel that somri gyuze kola kamu shweyi ani di moshu kongla ya ani onzo Tsering namgyal lagi tep ni chi nyebe chala speaking tiger ne bedu na yore ting onzo unji chikchi chowaji
beautiful when each hands yalang
지당 커서라도 베베 좀리 규제기 루규디 초진의 릉부시 위치래와 로직동 숨절 하스두고 래 초진의 좀리 미겨외 루규 통도 냠숨 기 루규 우스샤벨 좀릭디 링부 시우치 마레 표 낭라 케바 가시 숭에 쳐베나 도갈 샤프릉 스링 왕게라 짬베 아니 슈누 담메기 담규시 저레 디 가시라나 다 베베기 좀릭 novel sigra 좀중 링부 통고레시 숭구도 아니 디 제라 로자라 카시시 페지 베베 좀 링부데 티요 마레 아니 당당 아주 데링 댕외스 카미 슈에디 전주 지조 낭라 아니 좀중 좀 가서 땀 유메 디 콜라 임 송장에 디 겹중 통도 시나 삼송 인지 나라 베베 티베 당다보도 novel 고주지요레 통부디 직동업주 투주라도라 idols on the path se jik도요레 디 제라 아니 로솜줄 하우스 제 직동업주 고주 고지 라 아니 고주 고글로라 디레 자누라기 맨델 오브 샬록 홈스 또 나오레 디 제라 아니 Tupten Sambelagi falling through the roof, you don't yell at Timbere, and the Jela, Tsering Namgyal, the Tibetan suitcase, then you don't chukul Timbere, and it's Tsering Wangyalagi, another place, then you don't issue Lol Timbere, and Tupten Sambelagi novel, Niwa, Copper Mountain setting on the Pinu Building Khan, and you don't issue Sakji Lola Pargyabere, the Jelani, you don't Nisoni Lola Tsering Yangzom Lagi, novel D, ye Pargyabere, any Pubegi. 인지 더 뷰니죠 나라 집에 나랑 하고 열 집에나 노벨 서슈디 페이지 텐진 세바세디 이마다도 아니 디 스링 남겔라다 트링 양좀라 인지 나네 좀 난거래 되니 이번 송장 직전에 크라니 까메 슈에디기 튼다 틱부디 인지 나 연구 이번 송장 아니 베징에 크라니 디워디 인지 나 뷰에체 아니 텐진 니말라랑에 뷰나 저거 뷰로와 so thank you very much the topic that we are going to talk about is Tsomka Nala Tawa, the language of homecoming. For exile, home is everything. When you are pushed out of your homeland, then that very idea of home is everything that we hold dear. But three of the writers that we have here, all are born in exile. And first thing that I wanted to ask is, how do you make sense of home, the idea of home? And how does that filter into your writing?
Yeah, thank you, Bhuchung, for my book launch. And my books are available at the counter there if you're interested. This is a very, very difficult question, you know, and it's an eternal kind of theme, home and homelessness. So, as someone born in India and lived in many countries during my adult years, I think it's very difficult to define home. But I found as a novelist, I think all novelists ultimately finds their home in their own art, because when I was writing my novel, that kind of became my home, because my mother passed away in 2003, when she was only 53, right? And she was very young when she came to India. And then after, when I lost her, I was kind of, I felt very rootless. So, and I kept on defining what is home. And then I started writing my, actually began my literary or writing career to try to find a space to call home. And I think the Egyptian novelist, I think it's a poet, Mohammed Dawood said that home is where you just forget all the desires to flee. Then that's exactly the home. So right now, I feel India is giving me an idea of home. And I feel very much at home in India. So I'm really very grateful for that. And I found my publishers in India, and I have my Himalayas to flee to and then work. So I think that's kind of a homeland for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhuchung. Yeah, I think the one thing for me is that a novel is a space to ask questions, and that's the distinction to me between a writer and a preacher, or a writer and a propagandist, or a writer and a politician. Politicians, preachers, propagandists come onto the stage with an answer. Writers come with questions. And so when we write, we're circling around several questions, and home is a question for all Tibetans because we're denied free movement, we're denied connection with our ancestral land. Even if you're in Tibet, you're denied that connection. So that's one of the seminal or central questions for Tibetan people and for Tibetan writers. And as writers, we are engaged in a struggle. We're part of a movement. Whatever your strategy for the forward motion of that movement, we're part of a struggle. And that struggle involves political commitments, right? It involves commitments to the greater good of the Tibetan people against a foe that wants our annihilation. And so I feel that the home question is a question that I'll be asking for the rest of my life. And I guess recently, like Tsering Namgyal was saying, I think that's really wise actually, that each of us has to find home in something that is internal, that generates us, that gives us sustenance, sustains us, our life force. And for me, it is writing. For Techung it might be music, you know. So there are many youngsters here. I think one of the sort of duties as we grow up is not just to, you know, be good children and serve our parents and our community, but also to the individual self. What is it that sustains you? What is it that gives you life? And that does become a home of one sort.
창문어 공감사 아니 게다기 꿀왜 저딩아 인지토라 디스 강에 조사를 가지는 나 제시 디스 야가 겹사를 to me home is very simple. It's about being part of the community, and if I'm in the community that is our Tibetan community, then it's simply a home to me. So it is as simple as that, and I don't think I have to go that deep in thinking about it. And also as far as our title of this panel discussion is concerned, the language of homecoming, right, Yala? So in today's world, different topics, different themes have different understanding. So the very topic of anything like this homecoming also becomes subjective. And each of us have different understanding towards homecoming. And to me as a writer, it is a cultural meaning to me. In Tibetan literature, it is about preserving Tibetan culture, traditions, our way of living, our language, our belief, the way we communicate, all these things. We can preserve these things through storytelling, and even in the absence of one's homeland. So in a way, I see it as a homecoming. And also, as we all know, a book has a power to bring you to another world, although Tibetan novel won't bring you physically back to Tibet. But it will definitely give you this sense of being in a Tibetan community where you will get this general idea about how Tibetan people live, how we communicate, how do we practice our cultures and traditions. So in a way, I see it as a homecoming. As a writer, that's how I feel. And yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Thank you very much. The second question that I wanted to ask is, because we have a lot of young Tibetan students from the Tibetan Children's Village School who are very interested in writing itself. And since you are all three novelists, I really want to come down to the really basic act of writing. So how do you go about writing a novel? Because see, for me, I struggle writing an essay, you know, short essay, for example. So how do you manage actually that? What is the actual act of writing? What does it entail? What does it take, writing a novel?
Yeah, I think, the writing a novel, I was trained as a journalist. So I know how to write because that was my job. It paid my rent and food and everything. But then when I sat down and I think my being a journalist was an excuse to become a writer. So I was a novelist in disguise. So, but I really think one of the challenges the novelists face is that the space. Novelist, you need a lot of space and a lot of time and a lot of energy. So that's why it shows in my writing. In Tibetan Suitcase, I wrote the book mostly in letters and journal entries and in essays. So I basically wrote on the weekends. So on Monday to Friday I would work, and on Saturdays and Sundays I would write like 3,000 to 4,000 words, 5,000 words. So that's how I process worked. And then one day I was at a airport in Hong Kong, and I was so inspired that I wrote one short story, and that became part of the novel. That became my novel, and I was very, very touched, and I was so I thought that could be a novel. It was published independently, but then it became part of my novel. So if you are a future novelist, I think that you be able to manage a lot of time and space for yourself, and also the language. You need to get the language right and the form right, and that's very, very complicated and deep. We can talk about that later, but on the whole, I think it was a very challenging task that I've never done anything more difficult. It's 63,000 words, but it's challenging. So yeah, I think I was shocked that I had a novel. And one thing I really want to mention is that I didn't know that I was writing a novel. So one day when I was in Iowa City, I really sat down and I thought, I checked all the files, and then actually I realized that in all the disparate writings that I've done over the past 3 or 4 years, it actually could become a material for a novel. Then I sat down, and it took me like 1 week to make it into a novel. So that's my kind of a very haphazard process.
So I studied creative writing in it's in the college, basically, in undergraduate, and then in my master's program. And the way they teach it is they teach you the short story, because a short story is 10 to 20 pages long, and that's about how much people can read in a week, because you have to read like 2 or 3 short stories per class, and you show up and you talk about the short story. So the short story is a nice form that is usable for like a class, but it's also a good form for learning the craft of a story. So if you're thinking about writing a novel someday, I would work first on the short story. Write something small. Write something about a funny story, or a person you find interesting or strange, or a person you think everybody misunderstands. And write the story that you think they really are. Who are they really? Or write about a ghost story. Just write something short and something that inspires you to sit down and try your hand at writing. And then read stories and learn the craft, and then set the goal to write a novel. So I would say take it step by step, because that's what I did. It took me a long time before I decided to start writing a novel. And because I think one of the things with writing is that from far away it can look very mysterious. Like, oh, how did this person finish a novel? Or, you know, they must be a different kind of human being. But we're just regular people, obviously. And really, like, it's just a lot of trial and error, doing something wrong, trying it in a different way. One of my professors once said, when I was first starting to write this novel, he said, you know, this is an old analogy, it's not his, but writing a novel is a lot like driving home on a dark night that's really foggy, you know, a lot of mist fog, and you can only see with the lights of your car, like just, you know, a few meters ahead of you. But if you drive slowly and you look just a few meters ahead of you, you can still get home eventually. So you can think about writing in that way. You don't have to understand the end. You don't have to know the whole road. You just have to look a little bit ahead of you and keep up the discipline, because that's what it is. You have to do it every day or do it every weekend, like Tsering Namgyal was saying. You have to find that time and build a schedule and build a regular habit. But also just trust that if you just see a little bit ahead of you, you will eventually make it.
Writing process of my novel. 당원들라 nga dung chiti sambala team samlo tang ba dung kandes tine team la shishane chashi dige di kechambore samgido so ngege ji dung di goju tenzi separe tadi la di genre di modern mystery chaire misu thajur gi yamsen chamjung chi so ngege team samlo tang sambala 먼저 배바지 미개바 주여라 디나네 당슈디 topmost 소제 뽕아 so 소제 대디 딕바 체시로 지라 지기요에나 디톨라야 어디라 시샤네 provoking the thoughts of our Tibetan reader ngadi 직 챙겨줘서 어디 지내다 삼로직 당선 선발라 nga 팀 야고치라스라 어디 갈라나 미즈 타조기 자와 간대징이네 덴바 타길 제도기레베 can the act of murder be justified so the theme is in the form of questions 아니 어디를 시샤는 얘기 좀제 답시 봐 아니 the genre mandala writing process mandare 얘가지 murder mystery 딜라 6 ingredients la 시샤는 얘기 좀 디체바에 당보디 setting la manda 이오레 close setting and open setting close setting this 제 렐라오레 it is in the enclosed area 강바 도시 이나 디레 train 도시나 디레 lobda doji ina dire so dinang modern mystery chik china this lela ro jiro odi jen as a beginner ngi close setting tambai and dinang ne location dharamsala megro ga opportunity thila ngi khangba thogje shi jo ta hasta ngarangin khangba rose means khangone se mar de dinang sere ani so setting end was static che setting next ani modern mystery khandejik dinamida so tonangil chego야 de 계정 통도 victim and crime ingredient niwa the somebody victim di the beautola 뉴제 폭미 레레 뉴제 폭미 di the 뉴제직 총기레 the dilla 뉴제 총자니 the crime di 고주그라 crime di solve che detective lane solve che so victim di 도나요야고 che 계정 보레셔 아니 victim dilla som야고 스타 아니 victim di the suspects 제바 간데 샤워레 인졸레 도나체 so 니와 victim ingredient 차서 and somebody crime so this the crime 간데이나 용시레 murder 인시레 kidnapping 인시레 theft yon sigire so nye the murder in smalta dinangya crime law chamgi cho thugla thonan cha ore samgidu 5W and 1H who what where when why and how so crime dinjonga thonan che so dila charji sum dinju sumche ani clues yang khungne law ore ta pangda dinjo charik cho pangda dinjo pangda khasia pangda yimba chamgi 이제 제초가 많이 버체 reader lo kopto yo야 도치다 kopto yo야 in the sense that reader gi lo this symbol o pangda di shishan ta ngone color suspect ngoma di rasare samsam ji lead symbol yang ngone di mare ngone shembar endroji ya red herrings layer dila endroji kopto yo야 yamache the twists and turns che the kitchen brush so clues dila thonang che ani dinyamdu suspects the suspects inzola alibi thonang che 대단냠도 군절에 reasonable excuse gore 아니 victim dila 뉴제 당사에 some suspect 창물었다 엔데로스 gore the reason 중주 다 suspect dila suspect 되기 victim 라 뉴제 제설에 딜 할레다 motivation yes motive 균롱 지고르다 균롱 지여버서래 so 딘정아 아니 타마델 resolution the ingredient 딘정아 상마 라시션 차치릭 아니 또 타마 죽되래 죽 칸데 두게 twist and turns 제 아니 culprit 디다 reveal 칸데 지게 so end dose 라시샤네 얘기 차치릭 아니 writing process end dose 도잖아
아니 디 khortsa Tenzin Nyima lalangge jukte thiwach thini thoso chidang chamjung nanglo mina sutin le de khechim burwada mi character building dirwa ani khrang gi di nanglo la pena shachana nangmi chi gi nanglo la ta pala de pe khechim burwachwa and di gi khachin reda mina sutin nanglo ne mi chi khechishu khachin chagore di khrang gi tung nanglo la khachin khechim burwe
알레레 yes di nangol michi ta yenamena di pala de chaire pala po gengo jore ta ko ta nangmi nangolne member chi gi sire 아니 디균에다 용라데 중앙 고즈그래 아니 보버디 축부로 스트레스 용라 중과에도 스트레스 아니 character building somewhat ensemble the modern mystery la shishane character building che di the mi manja la minda characteristics minja che physical descriptions minja che 아니 the digi gyune da 미기 ideology the longegi 오케이 다 미 엔조스레샤 미 딘데기 펜제벤제 제서 말에 저바스 엔드 등기데 디균이다 as a character understand 제되기 탑시 제디 계정거리 성기더라 아니 디 탑시 제베균이 아니 로고포스에 relate 제되 characteristics build up 지금 디나와 relate 제되기 traits 라워다 딘로 this low so 엔조체 아니 so 얘기다 character 민자민자라 characteristics 민자민자 change 까마지 어디서
hello
이 뒤에서 발 당아 탱당고 지기 있어 발라 디나와 character 쭉쭉직스 도시요래 아니 this color 중스랑 알아년에 탑시로 시 디나와의 physical description 뒤에 깔라고 중스다 미잠자라 동반에 시마 강바 봐도 대시 민자게다 describe 쳐 so 알아년에 탑시로 시하시라 대네 the Namgyal 강도도 싸워나 아니 character description 라라 character building the 야가 차이를 생기더라 어디 인도싱이었어.
And I wanted to ask Tsering about your novel We Measure the Earth with Our Bodies. The central characters are all women, very strong women, also in many ways very vulnerable. Did you have the clear idea of the characters beforehand, or did they emerge as you were writing?
Trying to recall. Yeah, I think I did want to write about Tibetan women from the beginning. You listed a bunch of novels that have been written, mostly by men. And that's not to say that Tibetan women aren't storytellers. I grew up with a lot of Tibetan 얘기 아말라다 아네다 bungyat sama like mancha pomor 탑상 볼 때 누가 동시에 되기래 라 김재기 꼴라 시기래 다디 캠기 내주당 아주 캠플랑 아주 시작이 내주 상마 시기래 like Tibetan women are storytellers and they are the quiet center of our community. Sometimes they are the loud center, but often we don't consider how much they hold us together. And I'm interested in Tibetan women also because I find women to be very interesting people, just not whether they're Tibetan or not. They're very complex, they see a lot. they don't necessarily express everything they see. Those kinds of characters are interesting for novelists, for writers. Like, don't 상마통기하나라, 시다 interesting 도 통기민도라, 미든조라. These kabla layers, those are interesting people. 아니 얘기 산줄라 다 단답도 얘기 미제불라 버바 아말라당 아내라기 슈디 this 미기 시다기 통중치기들 시다 지기민도와 콘적이 슈땡인저스 이텝드불라 슈집고 말에 양 강에다 가르치기로 상마땡인저스 아니 콘적이 their beauty, their intelligence, just the complexity of Tibetan women. So that's what I wanted to write about. They're puchikta yore라 central character. Sum pomore chik pure. Last they put it. Yeah. So what was your question? Did I always imagine that? Yeah, I did. But kunzugi korla kale shinsum like tangboda ngigi samsula dinde character dinde kodu samskanana. They're sort of based on people that I grew up with. You know, they're like combinations of people. It's not like one to one, but it's like one person represents a kind of a person that I'm interested in. Another person represents a kind of a person I'm interested in. But as I wrote the book, di tebdi tiela nga lochus korso, and titukala ra, ta nga zo misala tutukala tangbo chik tongida, ani kale lochi ni sum shi chula mangra gochuida kunzo korla. Chikpare tebdi tang bandinare. So that's what happened to me. I understood them more and more as I wrote the book. And then by the end, oh, this is a real person though, like, how come I didn't know more about them from the beginning? And I felt like I was the one who was not really listening to them. And the whole time they were there and they were talking to me. And it took me a long time to like,
And you'll meet them in real life later.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tsering, Namgyal, I wanted to ask, the two of the central characters in your novel, The Tibetan Suitcase, Khenchen and Dawa. Yeah. So how did you were they based on actual real person, or did you make out of them out of thin air?
Yeah, Dawa was kind of alter ego of mine. You know, that's not really me, but he is a Tibetan born in India, a typical Tibetan born in India, struggling to find a place in the world. So I thought I needed someone like me, and he's very passionate. He's an activist, he's a writer. So I'm not an activist, so but he is kind of similar. But he, you know, he does a lot of writing, and I wish I were more like him, you know. And other one, the Khenchen Sangpo, is a character that just came to me, you know, one day, and I'm grateful for that, because without Professor Khenchen Sangpo, a Buddhist scholar, in the book, I think the novel would not have moved on, because I needed a very strong kind of powerful person to take the novel forward. So he provided that. And I also wanted to write about the rise of Buddhism in the world. So Professor Khenchen Sangpo is a metaphor of the amazing growth of the interest in Tibetan Buddhism and literature in the world over the past 30, 40 years that's happened. It's almost miraculous. So I used him as a kind of a metaphor for that. So that took the novel forward. But then, you know, there are a lot of interesting things in the novel. My novel is more like a very literary meditation. It's not a classic, like a commercial novel. It's more very literary, and so it was not really popular with a lot of people. But people who love it, who really love it. So I think I've fulfilled my ambition in that aspect.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to ask is, whenever I introduce myself as a writer, people think, you know, we are very recluse, solitary people who
Yes.
always think about books and nothing else. But, you know,
Yes.
you are all writers. So what do you do for fun, apart from writing?
Like in my novel, Dawa, he falls in love with a lot of women, you know. He's a very attractive person, unlike me. He's slim, and he has a ponytail, and he is a very good poet. And then he falls in love with this very beautiful young scholars coming to visit Dharamshala. So it's completely different from me. So the Tibetan community. So how they enjoy life.
That character probably looks like me.
It's not set on you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I like that answer in the sense of like how important it is to fall in love as a writer or as an artist. And I don't mean that with just people, but with like your life. It's important to love your life, even when it's not going great. Because the nice thing about being a writer is everything is material. Everything is, in a sense, usable for your work. So when you suffer, when you feel jealous, when you feel rage, when you feel all of these things, it's almost Buddhist actually. You can like experience it, but then you can also step back and look at it and say, wow, that's interesting. Why did that happen? What does that show me? And that's, writing almost lets you live a second life. You get to live twice. You live in the moment, and then you live a few seconds later, the same moment. Or maybe you live that moment for 3 years if you write a book about it. And so, yeah, really living your life, loving your life, falling in love with other people, all of that's good for you. Getting your heart broken, good for you. Just live your life, be in the world, be alive. Certainly don't just sit inside in a library all day long. But for me, I really love to travel. I travel a lot, although I think I've overdone it lately. So it might be time to stay still for a while. And I really like to walk every day. This is something I've noticed with a lot of my writer friends. We walk a lot. That's when we get a lot of thinking done. So I try to walk 2 hours every day, an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And I try to either listen to music or listen to nothing and just pay attention. Sometimes when you're at home, like so chipo nang la samutai mang tane yago mindwa ngazu popa chizo nang la yo samlo mama tang la yo ngone reta ngone re samlo sheta mama tai americana na inji ji rumbuche la chi tidwa how would you describe the West? And then Rinpoche said, lost in thought. And our thoughts are not that original. That's the problem. Most of our thoughts are the same thing over and over. You notice that when you talk to people, they say the same things over and over. It's very difficult to have an original thought. It's very difficult to change your thoughts and to look at your thoughts. And most of us, we think the same things over and over. Fall in love.
단다 Tsering Yangzom Lama gi sungona shre nga dungche gotsugone che ti samlo manggo dang shore ro chasra 아니 어디시니 nga 줄로 강망만 로 땡가 치 말에 중직 지라 samlo manggo dang shor기다 다디 검시로 찾으라 어디 같은다 중니와 제 참샤 이디스링아 아니 what do I do for fun 라 nga football 제 거에 game 제 거에 땡상아 PUBG 제 거 차샤 PUBG 너무 끼우라 로고님 직 가마로 그냥 제모전 끼우르시도 아니 데모딘데 다이고라 디나오는가 애니메 다이고에 더디라나티 데고시라미도 게로메 다이고르시 디나오 로맨스 구스 말 디나오 땡선 서스펜스 스릴러 망보르데 게로모노 so different genres different topics themes cover 야고 치다 so anime 게로마 볼lywood 또 싫었다이메 so 데모로다 아니 로고님도 야마캄 아니 가마로 그냥 뒤즈엔로다 so football 제 제모로제 아니 샴바 엔로스랭아 믹스게다 지미라 아니 중체링라가 가지기는 사자 찍을 때니 중체디 여행이 없더래셔 this solitary journey to Australia so 지부스 티디스바 아니 어디 중에 가지기는 사자 만다마도 cafe dinje 만다마도 도라 차로스가 fries 로스가 솔라니 중체리 찍기우르시도 아니 중체기 당봉아 동체 고속도 좀 바티스 nhập多로 시절섬때 간식 기울이시 돼. I think it's a fun process. You build your own characters, own worlds, different understandings, different situations. So it is like you're creating your own world. So it was unexpected. When I first started writing, it was initially as a challenge. 당아 배송업전에 퇴인했던 발라디스 비유디 간대되면 같이 땡이로 줬으라. 지금 어디에 팬데믹에 믹스게 제입니다. So then as a challenge 고속도 선바 타마들의 curious 중스다. It was not within my expectation. So curious 중스라 이내 제 망천에 곧 나주도 디 야고시라면도 so 직 balance out 해야 돼 개정부레시라. 술라 curious다 아니야 야가주도 정도 티 so 엔도 개정부레시라.
그래서 아니 당동아 대화 가시시 네 대화 먹게 건라야 와네 미망람 랭게 lokdu mangbo special ani mi shema mang pesha ani thiwa yona thanglang chik thiwa yona lokdu number so thiwa yona tharing khogap pe sangbore Tsering Yangzom la sa Canada ne pebere Tenzin Nyima la sa kya lojo ne pebere Tsering Namgyal la Deredun ne pebere ngaran chikbo dharamsala ni ro semba sangmo chodan pebo songza di khogap dis kumbra shre tene im songza ani chiwa yona if you have any questions to the authors then it's a good opportunity.
Hello. Tomondelia nombalenji sigala testele to ani dilpen chasa testele shweyi. Ngi tuwa de karijin da azo drone tuye de chidangi azo jinso nana drone de kechimushu chagi yore. Yimbe ya da drone tingi mamuchi gi ya drone mamuchi lo ne ani drone ding na lo manai na da khombagi zo jen ina koyu gi ne da khandi ina mamuchi lo ne deso ne loji le ne tigi yore. Yana kashi so gi so ne tigi yore. An number so drone tingi ma sonza an number so tanda tishan jo drone deso na la manchewa di mi shimbagi ani drone mambo lo ne teni loji le jo inda yana 수스랑게 아니 공부하다 차상 수준 수준이 되는 인스 어디지?
도치나 네 나랑을 티와 다른 용의 티와 기랑기 배지 다 기랑 추억이 네버디 또 인사를 아니 송다 Tsering.
Yeah, the 저의 패키지 보래 아니 이게 삼촌은 나랑 길기 지지로 망체 나라 experience 톤티 나랑 소소 냠용 톤이 간선은 잠블링 디 knowledge 다 유된 다 저라 타요 말와 칠로 밀라 타메디 이나 소소의 냠용 디가 지디 이나 찍어찍한 제고면도 댄스 교조당고 댄스 만다와스 소소의 냠용 미통하다 만다와데 댄스 교조당니 안디가라 vision 도지 소소의 vision 도지 쭉투나 아니 디 탭디 야고지 차야라도 간선은 수수기 experience 디 쉐디로와 키랑기 케바디 키나라레 키랑기 마도 싱고 말레 키랑기 boss to the 수수 차로레 다 미션바 키랑 노르레 라에요 말 간선 디 키랑기 초로나 레차로와 수수 냠미나 레차로와 수수기 냠용 제차로와 기시 미션베 코티데나 타요 말와 디 다디 예 좀 만다 수수수 만다바래 이내 나랑이 냠종에서 수수기 냠종다 수수기 열기 돈이 제디 나랑이 디 수수기 더 라신 본다위네 아리 인지기 좀 보죠 마수리라 쿠랑 익스피리언스 개념은 티 네 약과 치우도로 굽추차사래 더 백게라심 차사래 쿠랑이 냠종 돈 띠고 디도지 데리 수행이 송송 두잖아
nga di ngegi tep tangbu de la character chi yore ngegi lo dao chi nga la tis lo chungs chi shinda changma like nga la dab chi lo cha che re like ngegi pala ta amala ta de gi lo dao re ani pola ta mo la gi lo dao re ani od chi ne nga lang gi nyamyum sa yo mara kunzo gi nyangyo phone tendu kala khande nya re sanjam la lo mangbo khala mara ne nya yo re na sa na yo re mi mangbo tong yo re 아니 랍자라 pani pugun zo hopsla tongyo도 내 중요해. 든 상황 나랑 냠유 메라. 아니 어디 지는 거랑 양디 탭 뒤에기 김세거나 되래. 가 냠유 메니 오지는 항 공이 되니. 티. 다디 하고엘라 렐로 민도아. 봐봐 로치아든서 디콜라 셔다 싱이 드미다. 카메라 컬는 big drama shura dila. Ani nganzo writer the demand share marila samgidu. Talk to me about your trauma dora. Dine yangminda. Sometimes silence is the answer. Ani wadi chiningi kita Tibetan Oral History Project online la website yore. Wadi pe akbudu Oral History Project dila transcript yore. Tikyo. Ani di kasa jamba link down camp shija miji lara inji down papa dinzo doni lo campa dinzo la nyama phola khande chungsung phola tendu gala khande chungsung phola khala khare sayo dine changma thire ta lo campa changa mancha khale ta pebdugora ani watching ngazo di kola shen ke chambore ani kunzo gidne chale nani pek ngazo la pe kar chambore samgidu ani nga di Tibetan Oral History Project ki website la pe mangbo tai kunzo tung mangbo loi and dines lo nga research chetuks ra ani kunzo ki kola dines ha kosta ngi pola mola ta mancha tong chare ra ani poni sanjam tendu kala tong re ani wodi chini kunzo ki lora ani nga this hakuida I did all da kunzo khandes tere khari sare khari nyang re ani samtanda khande du sketch shida khande du dines hakuida and the research thing ape kechobore samgidu kan sam ni ta ngi te dila lain ta mi sama te mi do thigda ta ngi te the historical novel re ochini historical research chigora ani ngarang machine di kharichin thigyola na ngarang the history la interest pe yo ngarang sengema gi kola like the kola hakungi jitu ani ta ngarang samjola ngarang di khasa phola dre mere ani ta sengema gi ngajo pola mola ke she mere ani sojo gi imagination che use che kechembo de anti ta kala research khari chituna chigio ta the foreign aid agency ya ta Swiss Red Cross ta kunje gi report din lo chi sengema gi report din the phoba din naja de ne nai du ta ani camp gi part din thong online la Shija ki part din 1960s ki part din ta part din ya kuchin tai nang din khande du bugu din khali tolo khari koi du ta khade lemal la du din sangma ta ni ra ani langma ngarang imagine chi ta ding ngarang gi interest dira re o chin nga din des chi gi titang mi sangma mi yora ta kyang so so gi interest kari re ta gora a kon ta kunzo la se ta kyang gi tiwa tira
tanga ngarangi 탭 당고 주디 선발라 냠뇽당아 믹스게 루투마서 가진에 다나가 냠뇽 사야 망고 하되어서 디낭어 조 리서치 셰레샤 게스 칸데 소프 셰레샤 디낭라 서스펙스 인조 레드 칸데 치도 군조기 엘리바이다 모티브 딘 성마다 리서치 셰제 아니 딩냠도 미 정외나 더 봉부디 4 stages 두레 디 하고야 제다 차다 디조콜라 창마 facts 가르가르인 바 하고야 된조식 탑시마도 안지간라 nga Sherlock Holmes tung loi ko wodi influence na nyamdu ani suspense thriller related demo ta ko so kunzu sane influence na motivation general idea tendejik round rane wodila shishane te tendos tigore nyamyong na ta ngarang this lu era da shambata mix ge chem to so research ne di che ani fiction tung tige na nyamdu dinangla emotion da dinzo ngoma indi ngoma ro chai ngoma lugai khejum bore samgidura adingnyamdu sense of realism di 어디 element 계속 못 통기도 so 얘기 얘도 fiction read sense of realism 직 누가 탑시 치라 so endorse 레샤
Tua Shimbayuna Luptutsu.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been reading and hearing a lot about mindfulness of late. I wonder whether any of you have tried it, and should I have a go at it and come up with a novel that's readable like you guys?
Do you practice mindfulness? How does it influence you? Should she practice mindfulness?
And write a novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've thought about this issue. I think quite deeply because my novel is a Buddhist novel, in a way. As Tsering said yesterday, that writing is spiritual. All writing is spiritual because it is of the spirit. I thought that was very powerful. And I think mindfulness, the writing itself is a kind of a practice of mindfulness, I think. It's meditative. When you're writing, you're meditating. You're putting down words and your thoughts are there. So I think it's very important. But I think the mindfulness as a word is something I'm still honestly grappling with. It's become too fashionable, and I don't understand what exactly does mindfulness mean, and how we should approach it. Is it meditation? Is it Buddhism? So I'm honestly a little bit baffled by it. So, but I think it's it sounds like something that the writers should pay attention to.
Yeah, I think he said it well. Yesterday at the dinner I was talking to a couple of friends about this term mindfulness, and they brought up the fact that mindfulness in Tibetan and in the original Sanskrit have a much very distinct tenor or meaning from the English term, mindfulness. So in Tibetan and Sanskrit, it's closer to remember, and it's in the sense of remembering that one is perfect, and remembering one's perfect nature, I suppose. Is that right, Jyotsana? I was taught this yesterday, so I don't want to act like I know what I'm talking about. So I think, there is a distinction between the long, deeply thought Eastern traditions on mindfulness, which has a very different meaning from the Western meaning that is popular right now, that is often, I guess, divorced from the religious aspect and something that could be useful in other corporate spaces, corporate mindfulness hours and things like that. And so this is just a way in which Buddhist and Hindu concepts have been changed for absorption into the West, which has a religion of its own, which is capitalism. So, and your question about writing a novel, I think you should do it if you want to do it. I would never tell somebody who doesn't want to write a novel to write a novel, because it's not a fun thing, it's a difficult thing. But if you want to do it, go for it.
I don't want to. I like editing with Bhuchung.
Mindfulness is not a strong point in my case. Although before I step onto the stage, I was practicing some breathing exercise, breathe in, breathe out, to calm down my nerve, and thankfully it worked. So in a way, I consider it as mindfulness. I don't know much about mindfulness, but one thing I would like to share about writing novel is it will teach you how to be patient. Having patience is really important in one's life. nga thangbo chung ti sumba ende chungge re sam gormas nga chigala gu de di gauchemia, especially standing on a long queue line ring good together gauchemira the dung che the it's a long process da lo gorgire so nga thangba ide di koro the this control so this joso resource dung tisa jela so shuk jumble leje okay patience you the ngang gu che you kejim buresha dinga so I don't know about mindfulness, but if you want to practice patience and if you want to learn how to be patient with things, I would definitely suggest write a novel. So that's it, yeah.
Look to so chiba yuna. Gyablo la lakudu ine ti look to sola chiba ide chiba yue de kuch look to sol chiba.
당모델라 상마를 뜻이 아니 니트어디 카리나 나가서 표버지서 나이나 this 미든도 기업대가 어루시다 아니 게라라운드 섬로이나 디 티로 지디엄나다 니람 용사마도 사메로도 아니 기업대로 차세서 어디
Give up like the color ke chase give up like suicide door give up che ko yema so nangba in the nangba like the there's a difference between Buddhists and other religions because there's no death in Buddhism, you know. That's the beautiful thing. Also give up cha ko mindu ko ranshin do tigre ko tarin dure ani sain dure give up che na marda give up che na mar di khachang di phupu mo go che ki ja maro di su ta phupu mo go ro cha ni chi ya me ngal kyol ya ma chi che chik chiu ji sama tu chi di maro di art in the ko ranshin ki ko khawai na chi ko le di ranshin ki it's alive, you know. The give up time in dul di dinner is something in da tangalo sumju sira di tomchini laso
Yang I give up chin dosongra like tidukala. Ngoneshana almost every day I wanted to give it up. But it didn't I don't think it was really a true thing that I actually wanted to give up. You know, I don't think I really wanted to give up, but I always told myself I can always give up. And with writing, maybe it's the same with other things too, but there's always it's like two voices. I say there's a devil and an angel on my shoulder. One is telling me, good job, keep going. The other one's telling me, this sucks, you suck, give up. Rah. And like that never ends. So I think now I just am better at managing the two sides, the two voices. I don't listen to one too much. If I listen to the one that says, you're amazing, keep going, good job, then I will also become like a shitty writer. Then I will become lazy. I will believe in my good, like my skills too much. And digi mani tuja chaira. Karina ra balance do koda this kalakyab laj koda like ochinis nge sanjala ra. This is just part of life. The tension di. I think it's sad when people give up a talent that they've been given. You know, if you've been given a gift, I don't know where it came from, whether it came from your parents, your grandparents, or your ancestors, or just from your previous life, or just from your privilege and your luck that you happen to be in a certain situation where you had access to certain things. If you've been given a gift, the saddest thing to me is if you don't live the right life to serve that gift. I think everybody should really try to live a life that is in service to their gift, to their talent. And I believe everybody has something, especially children, especially young people. You're all artists. Like, I think all young people start out as artists, and then the world takes it away from you if you let it. So if there's something you feel like you have a interest in, a passion in, and some sort of a gift in, yeah, try not to give up. But understand that the voice to say give up will always be there. That's what I see. It's always there. And I just learn how to balance, and I learn how to use both voices.
중디 지디선발라 디스디스 망고 고기 디선발라 디셈슈로 직 창의로 대 제스리네 WH 랑알라 우주서기 디스 랑신로 쉐서레서 우주서 랑신디기 비게 당알라 로과로 신서레 아니 지간라 WH 랑알라 비기 네제 갈란섬 야고요 딩냠도 좀 제기 젤데 야고시라요 다 유로 시어이나 아니 당아 때모다 유거위라 so 때모다 선발라 you get this familiarity with the patterns of storytelling. So, dinju sum gyubetone simshu machaela roqa yago chesra. So, jidi sambala kimala challenges 중중 나오다. 카시 중길에 다이나 디 인자 simshu chan데나 야고입니다. So, 딩에 야메다 nga continue keep on writing to chamber. So, Some of this course give up say na nye yame tang se
We have a question somewhere here.
창말을 테스트래 안 드링이 티와 가려나 다 켄 다 강라슈 비 상마 다 라이터 지라 다 라이터 도 이마이나 다 켄 상마 라이팅 체지 인트레스트 지라다 다 켄저 당보 데네 고츠 라다 아니 그런저 인트레스트 거리스네 레나도선 엔드로스 레나라 당한저 도 이마이나 당한저 같은 다 엔도 좀도 티를 렛서야 삼로 마고네 삼삼도 삼로 마고네 라 and some no tewa kordo chida ne wonde this is kali chida ne wonde kolte shiksuna.
Oh, yeah, only one of you can answer. You can answer, and then I think it's better.
당보디 집에 당보디 그냥 좀디 간데스 잉레레죠. 나 중중간에 좀디 돌아놓을 예. 아니 빨아디 가라 좀디 딕테이트 시 참참 땅이 디망고치 땅이 슈시 티주그래. 디니 잉글리스가 지기티에디 땅이 빨아긴가 땅이 인지나 땅이 딕테이트니 시기 로조카다 된 땅이 티주도 근데 로쭉쭉지도 알아 땅이 망고체고 좀 봐. 디니 인지 디스 잉딜레서 인지 게 빨아디 땅이 인지기게 도차스 인지기게 당보도 차래. 안 두수 전소소 인지레 인터스트레체 안 좀 게하고 고추소 내려오지래 아니 제라 나라 디 사회 레공기 나올 내가체 안 제라 투주디 대행에 쉬었다래 세터데이 선데이라 아니 나랑기 픽션 티기와 내가 매매기 아니 베베기 야간한기 베베기 냠뇽디 콜라 인지나ल 직법토나 삼소아 에이 디 practice 망고치 로 choose practice 신도스치니 니와들 다 계시줄때라 사무실에 타임인도 좀 뒤에들라 you have to be very simple and do station 디도 아니 삼땅 망고 땅터나 개 말에 뉴뉴 땅나 개 말에 지대로 흘려치니 곰나시래 아니 그 뒤대로 한 코란 뒤 창망시나 배주 땅 두 말에 창망 야고 용 말에 창망 독자 용 말에 참참 항사이닝 조든 뒤도르 지라는 게 한 두디 샘슈 파르 그렇게나 와우 안갈 디렉티도 와 삼소소 샘슈 파르도 와한 두신 샘슈 파르기 치니 좀 컨티뉴 체디 도스나 안 빼고 용 것부터 라서 우주gem로 우주gem 티데 왔다 라스트잖아
Tuashi ba iwe. Loptu. Ale, onda.
디즈 망고 메아치 결혼기 뒤와 당보들라 뒤와 니로 소스라 니와디 좀 뒤즈 좀 아이디얼리 이미도 라이더라 나야 당보 롭절레디 좀 갤라기 틸레라 좀 레트 사슈 챙기 등아이 so 어디라 nga this relate cheshos 좀직 제가 니만이 숨스 걸기 아니 비겔라게 다우스링라 요래 you understanding 빼고 인지 디즈 고주 나라 니마 태와티레 아니 nga 디 섬로땅에 this 걸기더라 이내 얘기랑 나 트릭 도시라 바이나 you have to observe at little things 소소기 고려 간대지이네 미이나레 심지이나레 네땅 간대지이나 더낭직 제더라 랑신기 아이디어로 실리도 그래 observe 강투도 제더라 니기 결혼라 섬지 사와의 직제라 록바로 지도를 섬기도 나랑기 중 제디야 나다 this 검시로 찾아다 중디 티슈링을 나 하드는 observe로 지야 베네차시나 디노라 character interactions 가능성 요래 since guess the solve example interrogation the 망보여라 character 남기 깨져 간듯이도 reaction 간듯이도 respond 간듯이도 남기 간듯이도 so 나디 마팅이랑 이 가지일라나 총두도 나오다 미 잠다 길어도 무슨 남기로다 아니 깨져 시도 간듯로 시도 아니 컨트롤 때나 컨트롤 간듯이도 지겨라 단ang 충충충충 체 so if you observe it little things 간에 start 전에 뒤에 so observation 디 개점 브레셔라 observation 강망만 채워이나 니균이랑 신기 creativity 기 level 토르 조에 내당으로 채도 나 엔도 소알레스라 so the more you observe the level of creativity will increase as well and 니균이 걔랑나 펜직 톱에 레버러시 더잖아
마지 튀어지 그들어 아니 튀어 탕보라나 디르더라 더 노벨리스 시나랜더라 아니 수소지 디 셀프 임프루브먼트 다인데로 쉐리 더 차날랜더 카르카르로 쉐로
Is act of writing novel a self-improvement? Yes, very much so.
결혼기 저도 야구고 나왔어. self improvement 라나 중치도 선발라 결혼 상신기 얇게 직도 그래. 나도 지라 얇게 컨데 로스토스라나 녀라 라오나스레 나 고데디 가오치메 소 강규링부기 젤디 야고시라 랍서. 디다냠도 소소기 통계 토이게 체르죠. 겨워직도도 딩냠도 중치도 선발라 창마 꼴라 하고 해야 돼. 개정버려셔. so 랑신기야 딜 할리래 지당 시작이 general knowledge yar게 줘야라 겨와체 아니 디그네야 character understand 제시링라 아니 the character 라나다 독도 미라 so 밀라이 디 자민저리 내당라 바베 타조슬링게 내당라 바베 레가직 치기를 so character understanding 치기라 딩냠도 알레 지당기 미딘조 엔드로 시기도 겹종직도 김센직 하고 해야지 남사 과도 좀 만나체 아니 you also learn to look at things from different point of view kundi기 kallo lanjena onashire things do not appear as they exist amma konda things do not exist as they appear so the idea was leader so self improvement tamta 종기도 쓰셔
We have one last question at the back. The mic is coming, please.
Hello. I'm trying to write down everything quickly because I have so many thoughts in my head, and I've read Tsering Lama's book, which I absolutely loved. So the questions are maybe pointed a little bit towards you, but they are relevant to all the things I've heard right now. So I'm just going to read out what I have to say. So one of the questions was, we must all make peace with the things we cannot have. And you spoke about mindfulness, you just spoke about honoring the gifts we have been given in whatever way. So you are from a place where there has been displacement, a lot of people want to go back to their roots. So how do you make peace with that? Have you as a community? Is it an ongoing thing? There's so many questions like that.
Yeah, thank you for your question and for your kind words. This is a really present question in my mind. I think my first book, I was really thinking about the ways in which what Tibetan people have endured is not it's not understood by the world. It's not just the land. It's sorry. What is it, Sunjula? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think the thing with the UN and all of these political spaces is that the nation is talked about in very specific form, very specific language, right? And it's really doesn't capture the level of displacement, but also it's a spiritual thing, I suppose, you know, to lose your country. That's not just about the soil, it's about what that soil contains, the stories attached to it, and especially for Tibetans, knowing how important the land is to us as a holy place, as a place that is home to gods and spirits. So, you know, my book, I really was just trying to grapple with the enormity of our loss, and to talk about it through a family. And I think the next thing that I'm working on is a response to my own book, the first book. And I'm trying to figure out a way to let go. Not in a sense of like letting go of what is rightfully ours and letting go of the injustice that our community continues to suffer. It's not just something in 1959. Tibetans right now are extremely oppressed in Tibet. So, you know, we're all fighting for our kin, for our people back in Tibet. So this is not something that, it's not a fight that we can really give up, actually. But what I'm trying to let go is, I'm trying to enter a new perspective, I suppose, about the ways in which we have to always move in life and as individuals. And I think that movement is movement of peoples, and displacement is a very, very old story. And that's why my next book, I'm going back 1,000 years. And I'm reading about histories of other communities in Central Asia, communities that have been displaced and remembered their home for 200-300 years. And then when an empire collapsed, they returned back. You know, so these are really, really old human stories and experiences. And I'm trying to draw from a larger canvas more kinds of communities, more kinds of traditions and civilizations to talk about the Tibetan story. I do think that Tibetan people are part of a great civilization. And what we've endured is at the level of world historical importance. And I think that a big part of my work for me is to insist upon that. Insist upon our greatness, insist upon our importance, even if the world doesn't see it. So, yeah, but I don't know. Well, does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, so thank you very much. Thananga jushi tsomka nangla tawa se digi gola kame mangbu chungre ani chidang tsomri gyuze gi thanzam yo mare mi gi samlo khazo tharing bo wanang sing gi tsomgi khapjo de de la dutu yor den ri songza ani digi trolling di mizi ganzang do de chire ani tering de chudu chik de chega nanglo la le changba yungge mare la ani 다가난 신기 베네샤샤나 델라 페베 애니 코란스 좀 보숨기 탭 로가레 스링 남겔라기 중디나 이그디 랑기 토네 중시고레 스링 양좀기 뎁디 바이나 게럽 루규기 겹종 체제 점중치고레 인지 니말라디 애니 미스 탁주구샤지 중시고레 근데 무슨자 미레리기 타마타마디 간저 도르드나 소소소 통도 양숨 디우샤니 중디 체바이나 di any so nyamyon da so music tumba any chizo number tumba dine chungre sing di shuna samsong. So thank you very much for coming. We have spoken about process of writing, why writing matters, especially for marginalized people such as Tibetans. I think the act of writing, the act of storytelling is fundamentally important because we are being erased in occupied Tibet in every sense. Our language is being erased. Our culture is being destroyed. Our very land is under occupation. So people such as us, the act of storytelling is fundamentally important, whether it's through novel or whether it's through music or film. So I think for Tibetans such as us, I think we must continue to tell our stories because we don't want to be forgotten. We must be remembered. In 50 years from now, if future generations look back to this time, what do we leave behind? That is what we have to think. And as far as artists we are concerned, we don't provide, as Tsering said, we don't provide solutions. We ask questions. We tell stories. And in the process of telling our stories, we hope that we are remembered, not as individual writers, but as people who have feelings, whose freedom is being denied. So thank you very much for coming, and we have all the books of all three authors at the bookstore, and authors will be signing the books at the side. So thank you very much. Volunteers, please arrange the book signing.
Kranzo thande di ani trolling di lukpo thondal pikba an laba do samlo sawa niba tanggoya ge nedan dinde chini an trolling yabu shure chungso an kranzo le ya thuchana shwe dinde chi. So we want to thank for the amazing discussion that we had. It was rich, provocative, making us think again and again, reconsider some of the things that we usually take for granted. So we want to thank their participation this morning, and as announced, their books are on sale over there. So from the organizing committee, we would like to offer them a scarf as a sign of gratitude. For that, I request Mr. Kama Ishila, who is the chairman of the Public Service Commission, tanda ngazu chenju pyoshungi leje demgo lengangi unji chidu surba kameshila depen narona shwe in kwanzuli ya cheda tuen dindechi kena depen na tambu di Tsering Namgyal dine tochana Tsering Yangzom la Tenzin Nyima la andine Bhuchung la yana kubar chutun dine dingwal ya thang zo sungshe nange Techung la tha Jhola Techung la tha ngawan shirab la phen narona ngawan shirab la Techung la tha ngawan shirab la thand de yo samare kubar chutun narona